All right, you're calling from a 518 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? You're on with the gentleman.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Michael, what's up? Matt.
How are you?
Matt. And Mr. Griscom.
This is Dave from Jamaica. Dave, what's on your mind?
Yes, this is Dave from Jamaica. I was going to kind of thank you for bringing up a point earlier. I'm not sure if it was in MR, but you were talking about hypocrisy as a pressure point.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've noticed generally in the left, people tend to rightfully criticize the U.S., which they should. But sometimes they tend to forget that the other world powers, like I know with personal experience with China and stuff, they don't care. There is no pressure point.
Right. I was making the point that for the hypocrisies and contradictions in U.S. foreign policy, which, to be clear, are definitely still primarily, and this is changing under Trump, but they're definitely driven by, like, you know, the real interests that drive foreign policy. But some people, they will say, like, oh, you know, what about the hypocrisy of, you know, the State Department releasing a human rights report on a country that the United States is selling arms to, which is true. That's a hypocrisy. But it's also as I said, it was like a pressure point. A local activist in that country could say, hey, there's a contradiction in your policy here, and I want to sort of walk that line through it. With, China is an example. Like, I do think of China's policy in Africa. It's like, yeah, well, we just gave a government there $5 billion. We're doing a road project. We don't give a fuck about this stuff at home either. Right. Like, okay. Sorry to hear that, dude. There's no pressure point. Right.
So I think, what would your advice be? Because these world powers seem to be rising in strength. And if they are maybe more honest, which is refreshing, but if they don't care, what can we do to combat that? Because I don't want.
Well, you have to
don't want the world to be under China's economic thumb either.
You have to be like, get into your Obama mode. You have to be like, is that China? Is that who you really want to be? Is that who you really are? No, I have no idea. Thanks, man. What do you think?
I don't know. How do you exert pressure on a country that doesn't feel shame about its political hypocrisy? That's the question, basically.
Yeah, or even if there isn't even hypocrisy, maybe it's just synchronized. Like, we don't do like human rights at home or abroad.
Yeah, I mean, I think. The only pressure point that a country like China has would be the theoretical possibility that its gigantic labor force would suddenly stop working.
Right.
And that's right. And that's just not likely. So you know, they're either that or they lose markets because of international pressure on countries that do have pressure points.
No, but that's interesting. Maybe that's, you know what, I always feel mixed about this because I'm never gonna, like, you know, recommend or theorize about a course of action that could put people's lives at risk. But it does seem to me that, especially in an environment that's getting much more of just about being overt about raw power, that, you know, we've talked about that, right? Like, that it wasn't that Marx romanticized working people per se. It was also just literally like, this is where your power is if you're not of capital class. Workers as a mass. That's the only group as a collective that could just say, like, nah, we're not working today. And that's a big problem. So I don't know. Maybe it's scary. It didn't sustain itself, but I remember when in Zimbabwe during one of Mugabe's crackdowns, there wasn't enough, like, basically support from the government of South Africa, but there were arms shipments coming in from China to Zimbabwe, and there were South African labor unions that were refusing to work the docks, and it delayed arms shipments. Like, it caused a real headache. So maybe that's the path. Just like what Griscom was talking about earlier with regard to Amazon. I mean, people just being like, all right, we don't have to appeal to anything. We're just not going to fucking work. I don't know.
Well, I guess that's the only route we can take, I suppose. So, but it does kind of scare me because I am also a critic of the U.S. But as you rightly said, these hypocrisies are things you can work with.
Hypocrisies are opportunities.
Right, but with people who really don't give a fuck. it's kind of scary. Right? So they're like, whatever, I don't care.
Right.
So it's.
To be fair, we don't terribly care either.
Right, yeah. I mean, that is also an important... Like, I want to be really clear. I wasn't making... I was saying literally, like, on a PR basis, you can cause more of a headache. But I don't think the United States particularly cares either. And there's ample record to demonstrate that.
But it's an angle we can use. I know that's the thing. It's why I say it's scary when they don't even have to pretend. That's when things get kind of...
I don't think we're in the pretend time anymore, for better or for worse. Like, pretend time is over.
But wasn't it like Ho Chi Minh that cited the Declaration of Independence? Like, right, like these sorts of like...
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Right, like what we put on the registered, like forcing us to live up to that is actually a useful project in certain cases.
Having that, I think that is a useful pressure point.
It's always interesting to read like when North Korea or China releases like a list of the United States human rights violations.
They're usually pretty
because
good.
they usually are pretty on point. You know, they recognize like what goes on in our country, and you know, you go all the way back to the Soviet Union. You know, Stalin was pretty serious when the United States was criticizing what was going on over there. Was pretty serious about talking about apartheid in the South and all these other things that were going on.
I actually have a whole collection of posters from that era because I lived over there about racial discrimination in the United States and child labor in Fall River, Massachusetts, and the Russians
Does any of that live on in Russian politics?
No.
Yeah, it's gone.
No, they killed that dead. I can assure you.
Like that Stalin was like, they're abusing kids. I think I'm going to kill one of my mistresses tonight. Thanks for the call, Dave. Appreciate it, man.
Wait, one thing before I forget.
Yep.
With the press conference, I was just saying, what you saw was dumb inception. That's how Russian collusion works with Trump. Basically, Putin just compliments him, and then he sneaks in what he wants at the end of the sentence. Like, Trump, you're great, NATO sucks. And then make Trump think it's his idea. So, all right, that's all I have to say.
All right, thanks for the call, man.
Inception would be a funnier movie if the process was a lot easier than, like dealing with dreams and stuff. You just had to compliment a guy, and then you get into his brain.
Yeah, it would be an 85-second movie.
It's like moron Inception with Donald Trump. Just like, hey, how you doing? You're great at deals. Whoa,
great golf course. Great golf course. I scored 2 under my normal handicap.
It's like, yeah, you want to dismantle the European Union? Yes, I do.
Roll credits. Christopher Nolan Presents for $290 million.
Do you think Inception's overrated?
I don't.
Okay. You're a Nolan fan.
Well, no, well, let's put it this way.
Okay.
You can't really watch that movie a second time on TV and enjoy it.
No. Definitely
but the first time you watch
this
it
is why I'm asking you, because when I first saw it, I was like, this movie's awesome. And then I tried to rewatch it, and I was just like,
I saw it twice in theaters and enjoyed it, but that's it.
Yeah, but maybe it is just the theater experience. I mean, the guy knows how to make like amazing visual.
But it's also like you feel like you're a brilliant guy, when you watch that movie, because it's so
Speak for yourself, David.
It's about
your ego does not.
So many
speak
people
for
were
me.
just like, I'm so confused by this plot. I don't understand it. And at least maybe I'm talking about myself, I guess. But it's like,
wait, are you both people in that dialogue?
I went home and had a long conversation with myself.
Other Dave was like, you were confused, you fucking idiot.
Part of me was like,
no, I wasn't. I was following. I just didn't know
like
the conclusion. You're a moron. I'm going to be reading Lacan if you need me.
Wow, that you really just that was the beginning.
We just inceptioned you.